Call meeting to order. We have all board members present here except for Rick. And we'll get started right away with letter A, communication item. Janelle.
Right. We'll invite our elementary principal to give her update for this month. Mary.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Kudos goes out to family and students for a successful school year. Graduation and awards were moved indoors because it was raining at lunchtime. So we had it in the gym and that was exciting and fun. My first experience inside with the team, and my favorite part was when the staff did the arch that the fifth grade students marched through or did their music to on the way out. It was just such a really nice feeling. Staff, another kudos to our staff, the high school students, families, parents who came to help clean and organize classrooms on June 1st to help us with our HVAC project. That went really well. Couple updates for you. The color run was highly successful. It was full of children and families and community members and businesses. It was a really, really fun day and not as hot as I hear that the first one was a few years ago. So that's a bonus. Curriculum cycle update. We did combine 2019, 2020 and 2020, 2021 because of the pandemic. It kind of follows suit with what MDE had been doing, throughout the course of that time with moving relicensures back another year and pushing everything back. In 1920, during that time from 2019 to 2021, K through 12 ELA committees worked on aligning their standards, and our ESIPs were complete. That's our preschool early childhood indicators of progress. This year, the K-12 standards in FIED, STEAM, art, and music have been aligned. Things to look forward to. Well, you've seen a couple pictures on social media about our HVAC project. It's essentially shut down right now. The building is. We've disabled staff fobs until ready to come back in just for safety purposes, because we had a couple people wander in, and that of course caused some big concern for our construction manager and everyone else that they didn't necessarily have the clothing attire that they needed to have. We need to pause.
Nope. I'll just make sure you can hear us.
Okay.
Yep. Nope. He's going to sit and wait until his turn.
Great. Thank you. There was an early start. Contractors were due to arrive and start on the Friday, June 3rd, and they arrived on June 2nd. So we returned from breakfast over here and found them in our buildings. Staff were very compliant and kind in helping one another to finish up what they needed to do and then head on home because it wasn't going to be a safe place for us to be there. The project is on track. We'll continue to monitor and predict the final phases of when we can get back in and get those classrooms cleaned with our custodial crew and when staff can be welcome back to do some unpacking and prepare for fall. Registrations, we continue to take new registrations and enrollment, and we at the same time are continuing to lose a few kids. I would say right now we're at where we've been for the past month or so and looking forward to next year. We did talk a little bit about kindergarten in the past. We're currently at 61. So Brooke Lakeville did resign. I contacted Amy Ellison last Friday and shared with her that I'd like her to move to third grade, making our kindergarten team Quaid, Ludwig, and Skoogland. I think Ms. Ellison will do a wonderful job in third grade. She's got a great rapport with families and kiddos. She's a trusted adult, and I think that transition will be just a really good fit for us and for our greater community. Ashley King, the admin assistant, is busy kind of connecting all the dots with registrations and enrollment in Infinite Campus as we prepare for the upcoming school year. And our welcome back meet and greet conferences are scheduled for August 31st and the evening of open house, and then again on Tuesday, September 7th, that being that first day of school. So, do you have any questions or concerns for me?
All right, thank you. Right, so Mr. Orline is not able to join us today, but I do have his report that he wanted to ask me to send out for you. First of all, he has a thank you to the board members for helping with the programs and participating in graduation ceremony. Also a huge thank you to the custodial staff for helping to get the stadium ready for graduation. It is a lot of moving parts, and especially when you have what you thought to be predictable weather, and then you have some moments prior of panic where it goes from a 10% to a 30% chance of rain. You have a little bit different level of anxiety around that. So thank you to the custodial staff, and also Jeremy Schmidt for providing the sound. I thought it was a well-oiled machine that day, and it went well. So thank you for being there. Summer, they are working on student schedules, updating handbooks, and making adjustments to the daily schedule. You'll notice as we talk about budget, they have worked to absorb the halftime FTE for Fayed, and so that has required some adjusting as well. Activities, congratulations to Ellie Zimmerman, 4th place in the pole vault at state track meet, and that is a new school state record. So that's or the new school record. So that's awesome. And to Grace Robert, who took 6th place in the 1,600 meter run at the state track meet. Summer projects, there's an update to the concession stand. They're painting, putting in new countertops and a popcorn machine, and painting the football ticket booths. So a couple of things that are happening for activities. And Mr. Rick Hendrickson will start July 1st. And so we'll start seeing him give a report in August.
I give a shout out to the baseball team. They finished their season undefeated, made it to the semifinals of sections.
Yes,
They did a great season too.
absolutely. Thank you. And next I will invite up our technology director, if you would please. And I'm going to use you as a little bit of a guinea pig. And so I'm going to try to present, and I'm going to make sure that Rob can see what I'm presenting, if that's okay. All right. On the tab, you're going to present this one, share. Rob, do you see it?
I can see it. I thought it said Packers, but back in day.
All right, there we go.
All right, so the day that teachers had to move all their stuff and pack it up their classrooms, I was busy running around like a chicken with my head cut off, moving all my technology stuff out of there. I had to stop by each classroom, cover their smart board or their view board or smart board with plastic to make sure those are protected when they start drilling and stuff through the concrete. Had to take out their phone, had to take out their speaker for their personal application they use that during class day to make sure all the kids can hear them. Docking station, their monitor, their keyboard, and their mouse, and all their other cords that come up with that stuff. It may not look like a lot, but if you want to click through, Janelle, so those are all the keyboards and the mice and all the phones that came out. And by the end of the day, my Apple Watch said I had 15,000 plus steps. So Jonah got home and didn't move off the couch until he went to bed. So, but all that's back, and I'm hoping as we go along and classes get put back together, I can put it back a little instead of all at once, because that was a big undertaking. But they're all safe in the media center and kept us free process. Chromebook carts, we have a big I'm undertaking a big project with those two. We have a lot of them that are going into life this month actually. So I had to take those out of the carts, and then of course a different charger types, so all the chargers have to come out, and now the new chargers have to go in along with all the new Chromebooks. So that's my kind of stack of carts there. So I'll be working with that here probably maybe this month to get those done and ready for the school year. So some other items you'll kind of probably see in the budget later on. We're going to be adding some more security cameras around the district. We have just very little blind spots left, both inside and outside. So we're going to add those in, and by the time we're done, we'll probably have about 150 cameras district-wide. So we're pretty well covered, which is really, really nice.
On both campus.
Both campuses, yep, indoor and outdoor. Server work, I'm working on updating our Windows Server systems up to the newest edition 2022. So I'm kind of taking those down one by one and getting those done over the summertime. A little easier to take stuff down because I affect a lot less people than I would during the school year. So it's just good to keep those going and up to date. Kind of an interesting story too about our Chromebook Insurance vendor. We've the past, not last year, this year, but few years prior, we bought insurance protection through a company called Stay Mobile. So what we use those for is if we had a screen break or a keyboard not working, they would get sent into this vendor. They would repair the device and ship it back to us. They had their warehouse in Georgia, and they have since gone bankrupt. So we had about 25 devices held hostage in the warehouse down south. But the vendor that we bought them through was able to get the devices back, and they're going to finish the repairs for us and ship it back to us. And they will act as our insurance provider for the last year coverage we have. So that turned out pretty icky, but it ended up turning out just fine. So it's just nice to know we're getting our devices back. hopefully with this new provider, we'll have a little faster repair times and stuff, so. Other than that, just keep working on summer stuff. You guys have any questions for me?
Cost wise, is the new insurance vendor about the same?
So they're actually, we actually haven't purchased protection through the insurance company the past couple years now. We've been using Belgrade to kind of help us with our joint agreement with them. We bring our devices there and they fix them for us. So yeah, there hasn't been any cost comparison, but they're just honoring the last year coverage that we have. Nice. So, thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
You.
Okay. And then we'll move on to our community education director, Matt, come on up.
Yeah, good evening. Pack report for you. So if you drove by the pack on Sunday, we've seen lots and lots of cars. We had the Pacesetter State Tournament here. There were 38 teams, 60 games on 5 courts. And then right after that tournament, or kind of when it was ending, was the Miss Paynesville pageant. So it was a really busy place. This Sunday again will be a Pacesetter State. They'll have 31 teams, 49 games at 5 courts. It was funny, they were wondering how we could cool down the high school gym. I said, could you just turn the air conditioner on in the cafeteria and put fans in there? I said, could if we had air conditioning in the cafeteria. So they're a little concerned for Sunday, but that's kind of it's 1969 building. We have at least 4 courts that'll be air conditioned. So the Greg Schwartz Memorial Wrestling Camp is here through tomorrow in the pack. We have a 17-team pickleball tournament here this Friday as part of Town and Country Days that we're putting on. And there's a large breakdown basketball tournament next Tuesday. They'll have 5 courts going for that one too, and that's more of a high school level. That'll be the first time we've had that company here. What's nice about that is they take the registrations and line up officials and workers, and then our basketball program gets the gates, it gets the concessions, and so it's a real win-win for the district too. Let's see. Tonight for general community ed, our summer programs are going strong. We have a track meet at home, so those littles will be drinking lots of water. So it's hot out there, a couple home softball games. Pause after our moving over here last week. We're at 98 students enrolled in the summer Camp Pause program. A great group of staff, lots of returning staff that have come. We ended the spring live streams program strong on May 28th with the home baseball playoff game. Already working on the fall season and working on fall programming. So any questions for me?
I love seeing the pack so busy.
Yeah,
It's
What it was
great.
for.
yeah, great. So like yesterday, for pause, we planned to bus the students over to the elementary playground for time. And it was raining yesterday morning, so it was nice to they were able to come into the pack and get that large motor activity, and it's fun hearing those laughing and giggling sounds, and so that worked out well. So it's nice to have that available. Yeah, thank you.
On the baseball stadium lease review.
So this information is coming back. We visited this initially this fall and talked about some lease language revision. And then what we found is that whether we revised the lease or not, the Baseball Association wasn't able to do anything different because of the way that the legislature, the statute was written for licensing for the Baseball Association. This spring, one of the things that did happen through the legislative session was the growler. It's kind of termed the growler bill. Okay, but essentially what it does is it allows cities to issue different licenses to and it calls out town team baseball teams and leagues. And so I did invite Mr. Chris Stanley from the Baseball Association. Chris, do you want to come on up and answer any questions that the board might have? But so really the information that is coming forward is the same as was here in October. But what is different now is that there has been a legislative change. And so the language that is proposed, and you'll see I did put a draft of the proposed language in there for you to review. And you will see everywhere, starts on about page 7. And that is the only language change. And it went from 3-2 malt liquor to regular non-craft beer. So I don't know, one of the things for us is that it doesn't, the only way that this would be applicable would be dependent on their license that they are issued through the city and in accordance with state law. So I don't know, Chris, if you have anything that you want to add to that?
We have applied with the city. The city has to change their ordinance actually, because their ordinance is specifically for, basically for us. And I think, well, it's only going to change for us because the way the law was passed, it specifically states Tomball stadiums in the ordinance. And so the city, I've been working with them. It's going to city council or maybe went. And I think they would actually vote on it on the 27th. And if they vote to pass it, there's other stuff we have to do. We have to get a different, it's called a wine license through the city. And there's another fee for that. We have to get a buyer's card through the alcohol gaming enforcement through the state of Minnesota. And then we can purchase that directly from distributors. So that, and then we have to have an inspection of our stadium where we sell it one time. It's not an annual inspection from the state board or from the gambling alcohol board, but it's a one time according to Belinda. And this is all new to the city and this is all new to the state. So it is a little, we were hoping to have it all done. Our goal was with Fox 9 Tomball Tour coming here on the 29th. We were hoping, it would have been very tight, but we were hoping if we went to the school board now and you guys voted on the 27th and passed it or the 28th, the council could pass it on the 27th. You guys would, if we could get them to pass it and you guys said it was fine on the 28th, we could sell it on the 29th. It would take care of a lot of issues that we have in getting here. That's not gonna happen. Not saying that city's not gonna pass it, then you guys can't, but we have to have an inspection after the ordinance is passed. We have to apply for our license now. And so I talked to Janelle today. I said, I want to go through with all this. We want to get the approval from the city. We want to get the approval from the school board. We want to answer any questions anybody has. We will not sell regular beer till next year if all of this passes. Because by the time I got it all done, we probably would have one home game left. Probably best, unless we have a couple playoff games but if you can't hit, you don't get to have home playoff games. So at this point, we're not gonna have any home playoff games. We're probably gonna have one game left. When it's all said and done. And so we're not gonna pay the fee and stuff. I'm just gonna have it on my calendar to apply after January 1st. So the state can come out and do their inspection and once again, the state license is January 1 to December 31. The city license is April 1 to March 31. So they don't coincide, but the city's got it all figured out as well. I'm working very closely with Belinda. I've been working very closely with Bill Ludwig over at the liquor store as well. They've been very, very helpful to us. So the reason that we're doing it strictly is you can't get, right now, we can get Busch Light, we can get Bud Light, and we can get a Mango Cart beer so far. We won't get any more than that, and we're hoping we can continue to get those and get us through our tournament this weekend and the Fox 9 Tomball Tour when they come on the 29th. As we'll sell a lot those 2 days. It's not easy to get. We've been using a lot of contacts and help from people to get it right now. I don't have any Busch Light at the stadium. I'm hoping to have some for tomorrow night's game, but I don't know if I will. We will have it for the weekend, I know that, but it's very difficult. It's painful, but it doesn't make us much money either. It's just a convenience for people. And it gets tournaments here, it gets games here, when we built it, we were hoping to do other things than just play baseball there and have a lot of events there. Well, the graduation was just there. Fox 9 contacted us about this Tomball Tour, and I don't know if people have seen it. Just as a little update on that too, that's gonna be 29th of June, it's 2 weeks from tomorrow. We're planning on having lots and lots of events out there. for children. We're gonna have bouncy houses. We're gonna have face painting. We're gonna have a dunk tank, I think, where we'll let people throw in, dunk the pirate players. They don't know that yet. And, we're working on possibly having fireworks afterwards. We can get all the permits and stuff for that. We're having Charlene Strand's play group is gonna sing the national anthem. Eric Johnson and Jared Campbell are playing from like 4 to 7 out there. Fox 9 they'll be giving away free ice cream the whole time. They'll be doing their 5:30, 6, and 6:30 broadcasts from the stadium, up on top, the way it sounds. So at Watertown last week, they had 500-600 people, I think, attend, so. Yeah, we're planning on a huge crowd. I mean, we're planning a lot of different things, working with a lot of different people on stuff, so. I don't know, but that's the reason that we want it. It's strictly for convenience, and it's, now that this law is passed, it's gonna be even more difficult, I know, to get 3-2 beer. Coors and Miller Lite do not make it anymore. Can't get it, so. We're lucky that Anheuser-Busch still does, but don't know how much longer that'll be, so.
We were informed earlier, a while back, but there isn't a whole lot of difference in alcoholic
It's
content.
4.1 is Busch Light regular compared to 3.2, so it's less than 1%. And I do know, like, actually, I just talked to Janelle about it today too, like, the mango cart that we're selling over there, box is 4.0% alcohol by volume. So I was talking to Bill, I'm like, Bill, your wife's giving me the license, you're telling me it's 3.2, this says, he goes, it says alcohol by volume. The volume must be a different thing, so it's actually less than 3%, 3.2% alcohol in the can. So, I did have a concern with that, and I'm like, well, if you're telling me it, I believe you. So, and your wife's giving me the license, so, so yeah, so there's things about with that, but yeah, it's very minimal difference. It's just that it'll open up where we can buy, Bud Light Lime, whatever, a lot of the people like fruitier drink. We could buy the seltzers that they're not even 4%, I don't think. 4.1, I think those are like 3.7 or so. We might be able to get some 3.2s. Bill's trying to check on some contacts he has for the Fox 9, but we haven't been able to get any yet, so.
Thank you. I just wanted the people who are watching.
Right, it is minimal difference, but there is a difference, and so.
And the other piece that I do think is we've tried to stay local.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is also important. So,
We're going to try, we may not be able to. Once you buy the buyer's card, which you have to have, I actually have to purchase it just like the liquor store has to purchase it.
Sure.
But Bill says, if we need to keep some there, they can drop off there because it's harder to drop off here. He's been very, very accommodating and excellent to work with, but we gotta go by the letter of the law too, so.
So as you kind of see, this is not an action item tonight. This is really just a review for you. Take a look if you have any other questions. It would come back to an action item at the end of June. So any other?
The only thing bad is, it will be, Bill Spooner's worked on the ordinance for the city. They've worked with the state, so I mean, basically we'll go by whatever that ordinance is, but it should say pretty much. And we're not planning on selling, I don't know what the ordinance say, but we're planning on selling just regular beer. Like we said, regular non-craft, we're not gonna be bringing in 7% alcohol crafty beer, so. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks. All right.
The C, school perception survey presentation.
All right. Hello, Rob. Thanks for being patient with us and waiting.
It's hard when listening to the last 10 minutes, I just got a stupid glass of water over here. It's terrible.
You got thirsty.
Yeah.
So let me pull up your presentation here.
Sure.
And I think, are you okay if I just, do you need me to show the PowerPoint, or can I just do the PDF and glide through the slides? Is that okay?
Sure. Do you want me to just tell you then when to switch?
Yes, that would be great. Is that okay?
That's fine, but whatever you want to do works for me.
All right.
Let me get myself settled on my end then.
And I'm going to present that too so that everybody can see that.
All right, that looks like you. It's a good first step. And you can actually go right to the second slide. I don't know that I had the opportunity to meet all of you yet. My name is Rob Demise. I serve as the research director for School Perceptions. We have a mission that has never changed in 20 years of our business, and it's to help educational leaders such as yourselves do three things, which is gather, organize, and use data to make strategic decisions. So we were founded in 2002, and since that time, we've conducted well over 10,000 staff, parent, student, and community surveys, all in the name of school improvement. And those 10,000 surveys have been spread across more than 850 districts who are doing exactly what you have been doing, what you will be doing, and so on, which is the strategic planning and potential pre-referendum planning processes. So tonight, then, I will be going through four things with you, some of the background information, which will include some of what you've already seen in your survey. The survey information includes some of the administration and logistics in our process. Obviously, the results and analysis will be an important part of tonight, and then I want to leave a few minutes at the end for any wrap-up questions that you might have. So just as a reminder then of our process, we work by initiating our survey through a paper survey. And the reason we do that is because my car warranty has expired 3 times today on a car I didn't buy 10 years ago. People don't answer their phones. So it's important to us that we do not do a random sampling, and we do not do a phone survey, though you can certainly take the survey on your phone. But we kickstart our process through a paper survey that is mailed to households within the district. And once that paper survey lands, then there are one of two options for people. You can either fill out the paper survey and return it directly to us using the business reply envelope. So that process did not include you. We didn't want it to include you. That's what you pay us to do, and that helps keep data confidential. Or somebody could use the one-time use access code on the front page of the survey to take the survey online. Emphasis on one-time use. So especially in a smaller community like the Paynesville Area School District, it wouldn't take too much to skew your data one way or the other if I decided I wanted to take the survey dozens of times. And that's not possible because once you hit submit or finish, that survey code went away and it was not usable anymore. Now that being said, there were some extras that we provided the district just in case there were just in case there were adults in the household that didn't always agree, which happens, or if somebody throws away their survey and whatnot, there are some extras for you. So what did that lead to? So the next slide is some of your specific survey information. As you know, your survey window was in April and May of this year. You had 720 total respondents for an outstanding response rate. You were pushing 28%. I would have very confident data with you if you were in the teens. I mean, this is really kind of the response rate that that researchers salivate over. So outstanding job there. Whatever you're doing in your communication channels in Paynesville area schools, keep it up because it went very well. So I feel very confident in the data that I can present to you tonight. And the benefit of that then is your margin of error is tight and it's below 4%. We then asked people for a little bit more information about who they are or who is taking the survey. So what you see here is an age breakdown. And I wouldn't be a good research director if I didn't spend more time than I care to admit on the Census Bureau website. And I like to see who took your survey versus who lives in your district. So 1% of your survey takers were in the 18 to 24 bucket. And we might as well make a template that has 1% there because that's always what it is. If I get to type a 2, I get pretty excited. It just doesn't happen. 18 to 24-year-olds are the least likely to take a survey. They are the least likely to vote, which is not a resounding endorsement of 18 to 24-year-olds, but it is reality. And that's not a Paynesville thing. That's not a Minnesota thing. That is a nationwide thing. For context, 8.7% of your community falls into that bucket. Your next one up in 25 to 34 was pretty spot on. 8% of your survey takers and a little over 9% of your community is there. Your 2 in the middle, you kind of see a little bit of a bell curve kind of forming then. 35 to 54 is a little overrepresented, and that's what I expect to see. That's what I want to see. Why? Because those are prime parenting and prime working ages. So one thing I always tell people is if parents and staff aren't even motivated to take a school-related survey, nobody is going to be motivated to take a school-related survey. So I'm not surprised. And in fact, I'm encouraged when there's a little bit of a bell curve in the middle. Your 55 to 64 is almost spot on. 15% of your survey takers versus 15.4% of your community. And then your 65 plus is overrepresented. And that's good because on the other side of the coin, from 18 to 24-year-olds, your 65 plus is going to have perfect attendance at the ballot box. They will be there. They will let you know how they feel. They are very likely to be retired, which also means they're going to be in a fixed income. So I have to know what they are thinking. I want you to know what they are thinking, and we do because they are overrepresented in your survey results. We then asked, is your primary residence in the Paynesville Area School District? Now, the reason we asked this is because people wouldn't need to live there. For instance, your staff, there is no requirement for them to live within the district, but they'll get the survey. Parents who open and enroll into the district, by definition, don't live there, but they have an email address on file, so they get the survey. Or if I were to own a second home within the district boundaries, I got a mailbox, so I'll get a survey. But the important part of this is we want open enrolled in parents, we want staff, we want it to be an inclusive process, we want their voice to be heard. But even if I'm a longtime staff member with a lot of influence, but I don't live there, my influence is capped because I can't vote there. So the point of this slide is moving forward, we're going to focus on the 93% of your survey takers who do live within the district because they are the ones that can control an election within your district's boundaries. We then asked, in which municipality do you live? About 2/3 of your survey takers were spread between the city and the township of Paynesville, followed closely, well, not so closely rather, but followed by township of Union Grove and Eden Lake. And then we did have a handful of people down here at the bottom in Regal and, but I don't know if I could say the M word, but help me out with the M word here.
Banana?
Banana, which one?
The one above Spring Hill, I'm not sure I know how to pronounce that.
Good. The one about string of banana.
Oh, banana, yep.
That one, okay. Caught me off guard. We then asked on this next slide, there are two pie graphs here, and it says, are you an employee of the Paynesville Area School District, and do you have children attending school in the district? So reflecting what I said earlier on, I want to make sure that staff and parents are taking the survey. That's really important, but I don't want them to be the only people taking the survey, because obviously there's a large chunk of your community and any given community who are not employees and not parents of school-aged kiddos. And that's what I see here. About 9 and 10 of your survey takers are not employees, and about 6 and 10 of your survey takers do not have children that are currently enrolled in the schools. So that's good. I'm seeing both represented, but I'm not seeing staff and parents dominating the results. On the next slide, we then asked, if you do have school-aged kids, where do they go to school? 42% were at the high school. 38% were at the middle school, and 57% were at the elementary school. So just as a reminder, this doesn't add to 100%. It shouldn't add to 100% because certainly I could have more than one child enrolled in the Paynesville area schools at one time. Finally, then, in terms of demographics, we asked an important question that was preference-based. Or in other words, what this question didn't say was, how do you receive school or district information? Rather, it says, how do you like to? So this is where do I like to get my information from? And it's in descending order of non-parents, non-staff, which are the purple bars here. So many of your non-parents, non-staff are looking to the Paynesville Press for school-related information. A slight step down then, school and district newsletters. And then I would say a heavy step down again for school and district websites. Only 21% are there looking at the school and district websites for your information. So for non-parents, non-staff, eyeballs are going towards the newspaper and the newsletters. For parents, they're a little bit more balanced. There is a long line of emails, so parents want email communications. And then they're kind of spread out between the websites, the newsletter, Paynesville Press, and phone notifications. Now, what I tell everybody, and what I mentioned to Janelle as we were first constructing this survey, is you're going to use all these things anyhow. But it's just kind of nice to know where your bang for your buck is going. It's kind of nice to know if we do put something out, do we anticipate reaching people in the way we want? Moving forward then, we're back on some blue slides here, and they're back in blue because this signifies your background information. So what this section of the survey is really a one-stop shop for you. In other words, the information contained on these upcoming slides is no different than it was in your survey. We copy and paste items from your survey directly into your report, so this is not new information. We really want these reports to be a one-stop shop for you, so that you don't have to worry about digging up an old copy of the survey, wondering if it was the final draft or it's something that was on the counter that's long since been recycled. You can simply go to this report and remind yourself exactly what was in your survey. And that's what these slides are doing here. So Janelle, I'll go through these fairly quickly. We defined the difference between a levy and a bond. We talked a little bit about how you got to this point and what factors are currently impacting your funding. Again, this was all in the survey directly. And then we got to the costs. So we asked the question, and then the way most people will make their decision is how much is this going to cost me, depending on how much property value I own within the district. So we put that both in annual terms and in monthly terms. We noted who those tax increases would apply to. And then we asked the question. So skipping right by that title slide, Janelle, and on to the next one. We asked the question, would you support a $531 per pupil operational levy for each of the next 10 years to maintain current programs, services, and course offerings? I included the question notes just as they appeared on the survey. And this particular question was answered on a scale of definitely yes to definitely no. So what did we learn? Moving ahead, you're going to see 3 slides that are all related to that question I just had up, but they're going to be broken up into 3 constituent groups. So first, your staff. Staff, obviously, again, are very influential, but there's only about 1% of any given community that are employed by the school. So very supportive here. Over 8 in 10 of staff members are yes on this operational levy funding question, but there's just not that many people contained in this slide. About 1% of your community is in this slide. Going down to the next, your parents are kind of in the middle. About 25% or about a quarter of any given community are parents or caregivers of kids that are currently in school. So here you're seeing 56% of your parents or caregivers are supportive of the levy as described here. And then lastly is your biggest group. So these are what we call our purple people. Your non-parents, non-staff, again, looking specifically at residents here because they're the ones that control an election. Your non-parents, non-staff are about 75% of your community. So most people in your community are in this slide right here. And right around 1/3 of your non-parents, non-staff are supportive of the levy as it was described. And 42% are saying no to the levy as it was described. One thing that I want to call out here, because I'll always get the question, is, well, what about these people in the middle? What about my undecided folks? The blessing and the curse about doing a survey in the Midwest is that people are Midwest nice, which is great 99% of the time until we send a survey. The problem with undecided is some people will know full well when they walk into the voting booth that they're going to tell you no, but telling you no in a survey feels rude or it feels mean and they feel like they shouldn't do it. What we have learned over time is that about 2/3 of your undecided folks will move downward toward no, and about 1/3 will move upward toward yes. So in this most populous group, in the highest proportion of people, if I really ballpark this to about 7, that means you're hovering at about 41% or so of non-parents, non-staff that are supportive, and the upper 60s or so for non-parents, non-staff that are not supportive. The other thing that I want to call out here is that it's a little high for undecided. It was a fairly straightforward, there's not a lot of moving parts. It's a fairly straightforward question. It's a yes or no question. Typically, I would see undecideds more so in the teens, somewhere between 13 and 18% or so. And you're looking at about a quarter. And actually, the number is the same for both non-parents, non-staff, and parents, caregivers. 23% here and 23% on the previous slide. So I am seeing that quite a few people in the community have not yet made up their mind. Am I shocked by that? No, I would say that the number of folks undecided in any given community has went up over the last couple of weeks because they are unsure of their economic prospects. But I would say here that even over the last couple of weeks, your undecided folks are a little bit higher than what I've been seeing more recently. On the next slide, the question is the same, the data is the same, but now what I did is I weighted the support in proportion to how people are represented in the community. So taking into account those weights and proportions, you're looking at about a little under 40% of your community that is supportive of the levy referendum as it was described. If I include the 1/3 of undecided based on the rule that I just explained, you're a little under 48%. Now, that is within the margin of error, but here you would only cross the 50% plus 1 threshold if you're on the upper end of the margin of error. So right now, the takeaway is here that I am seeing under 50% support for the levy as it was described. We then went into some cost cutting options. So this was the next part of your survey. And we said that while you're not endorsing, as the district representatives, you're not endorsing any of the following, but you're considering all options to potentially reduce expenses. And survey results will help determine what cuts, if any, are made. And there were several metrics here that we asked people to rate. So everything from class sizes to course offerings to curriculum. And then looking ahead, there were also transportation, athletic and extracurricular offerings, or facilities. So if I said yes, that meant I want you to cut it. If I say no, that means I don't want you to cut it. Where did that end up? Well, there's a lot of data on the next slide, but I tried to color code it to help you out a little bit. It's still our 3 constituent groups, and it's ordered again in descending order by non-parents, non-staff, since they're the most populous group. So if I'm looking at a scale of yes or no, what we do in the background is if I say yes, I want you to cut something, my score is given a weight of 10. If I say no, don't cut something, behind the scenes, my score is given a weight of, or my answer is given a weight of 1, which means the median then between 1 and 10 is 5.5. And the reason I point that out is because any numbers that you see here that are above 5.5 is an area where your community is telling you, yes, go ahead and make cuts. If a number is below 5.5, that means that your community writ large does not want you to make cuts in an area. So the number in the upper right-hand corner is the only one in red. So your non-parents, non-staff are saying, if you do need to make cuts, the area that we would support you making cuts first is in your athletic or co-curricular offerings. And as a matter of fact, that's the only number that is above 5.5, and it's the only one that is leaning towards yes. Finally then, we did some overall satisfaction questions, and these were weighted on a scale of 1 to 4. So if I said you were doing poorly, that was weighted behind the scenes as a 1. If I said you were doing great, that was weighted as a 4. So can't be worse than 1, can't be better than a 4. That's your range there. And the way that shook out is we still broke this up into our staff parents and non-parents, non-staff. So these are our familiar groupings here. And again, these numbers are great. They do take some digesting. What I prefer is actually the next slide, which is the same question, but it groups your respondents together in a slightly different way. So it says, how is the district doing in each of the following areas? Those 4 areas being A, delivering a high quality education, B, keeping the public informed, C, building pride in the community, and D, managing funds appropriately. So 76% of your community said you're doing a great or a good job on delivering a high quality education. And at a 2.92, you're just a hair below good. Right smack dab in the middle between fair and good are the next 2 metrics. A little over half of your community is saying you're doing a great or good job on keeping the public informed and building pride in the community. And then the only one of the 4 that lean towards fair as opposed to good is it's below 2.5, right at 2.31. 44% of your community, or just below the majority, said that you are managing funds appropriately. Finally then is what I call when our push comes to shove question. And it said, on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend the district to a friend or family member? And the reason I say that this is a push comes to shove question is because inevitably in every survey that we do, people are going to be supportive of some things, unsupportive of other things. But when push comes to shove, at the end of the day, how likely am I to recommend you? Your overall average here on a score of 0 to 10 is 6.52. So your first takeaway is you're in the right direction. Anything above 5, anything above neutrality, people are leaning towards recommending you. So that's good. And it is kind of a first hurdle to clear because people in general are not supportive of opening up their wallet for an entity or an organization for which they are unsupportive for. So, sometimes we're doing these and it's a lot heavier in terms of the reds and the maroons. And that's an uphill battle for districts because their average falls below 5, and that's not you. You're certainly above 5 at a 6.52. And you can just see that visually. You have more oranges, yellows, and greens than you do in the flip side of the scale. The other thing that I like to do here is just do some quick math. And I start at the top and I make my way down just to see, well, how low do I need to go before I reach a majority of respondents? So 15% of your survey respondents are giving you the highest score they can. So then I do my math. 15 and 12 is 27. Plus 19, I'm at 46. Plus another 12, I'm at 58. So I'm nearly 6 in 10 respondents, and I've only went down to a score of 7. That's good, especially over the last year or two. It's not uncommon these days for me to be giving these reports and not getting to a majority until I hit 4 or 3. And that ain't fun data to present. That's a lot of attack the messenger, and it's nights like that I'm very thankful for Zoom. because then I can quickly duck out electronically. But again, that's not you. You know, you're well above that. You're not reaching, or you're reaching majority, and you're only down at 7. And so I think that's corroborating with your overall average at 6.52. You're in the average you want. So putting this all together, on our next slide, what did we learn? We learned that a majority of staff and parents or caregivers support the levy. We learned that the group with the largest proportion of people, non-parents, non-staff, does not, and including the undecided respondents, increases support, but it remains below the 50% plus 1 threshold at about 47.5%, which, looking back at your old levy, is pretty darn close to where you landed last time. I think if I remember right, you're at a 46.54, and now you're looking at about a 57 or a 47.48 to 52.53 majority here. So there's a slight uptick in support versus last November. But looking ahead, it does look like either there's some decisions to be made whether or not you start to make some cuts and or you bring that levy ask down a little bit in order to potentially bring over some of those people that are currently undecided. So let me pause there and let me take a sip of water. And by all means, go ahead and ask me any questions you'd like.
I have a question. Were you involved in our last survey?
I was not. Nope. Nope. This was the first time I'd worked with you.
By chance, because we did another survey with you, do you have any of that information, or did you have an opportunity to look at that information from our previous survey?
Is there something in particular you're looking for?
Comparables, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I did look at the number. We had a 24% response rate the last survey. We had about 100 more people respond, which is good. But my question comes to like the satisfaction part to see if there was an increase or decrease, or if it's similar.
Yeah, it's a different scale. So in that case, it's hard. One, because it looks like this was 2019, which seems like a world away from where we are now. But it was on a very satisfied to very unsatisfied scale. So it looks like you had, if I quickly add up my numbers, about 83% of your survey respondents altogether. So they were satisfied or very satisfied. And about 10% or so of your respondents said they were either not or very unsatisfied. So kind of a hump in the middle. So I would say, looking at that 0 to 10 question, it's not vastly different. It's maybe a hair lower, but I don't know that I've worked with any district that is not lower on their metrics now compared to where they were in 2019.
So like you said, we're still below the 50% threshold with those undecided moving. Can you share from your experience what districts have done when they're in the same types of conditions?
Sorry, you broke up. I caught everything but like the last 4 words, and I think those were the most critical.
Sorry. What other districts have done who have been in a similar situation where you're right on that verge of 50%? Have there been certain tactics that the districts have implemented or things that they have done because of this, like the action coming out of it?
Yeah. So I have to speak a little carefully here because in one sense, I'm not sure. And that's simply because after tonight, we help you with data disaggregation, but we're very careful about support versus opposition for a referendum since we try very hard to remain unbiased. And so in terms of strategies to see a referendum pass or fail, I have to honestly plead ignorance there. From a survey world, however, I will say that support tends to increase when a couple of things happen. One, the simplest is dollars. I think now you have good data in your back pocket to say, community, we heard you during the last levy in the last election. We heard you during the survey. You know, clearly there's not support for the levy as it was described both in the election and the survey. Therefore, we're going to need to lower the amount. And really that kills 2 birds with 1 stone. One, it will bring people over who just cannot afford it right now. And 2, people really want to know that they're being listened to. People really want to know that the 15 minutes they took to fill out this survey, that something's happening with it and that you're doing something with the data. So just in terms of building goodwill, the fact that you're listening, just that action item alone can bring a few people over, and you're already on that margin. So I would say lowering the cost and letting people know why you're lowering the cost because of the data that you heard essentially twice now, I think that will move forward. And that's kind of the stuff that I would say is within your control. Unless you know how to put a 3 in front of gas prices again, that's probably your best bet.
Thank you.
I think it was a good report.
Yeah, no,
What is that? I know we can make comparisons, but the comparisons to what we had in 2019 is not today.
No.
We didn't have $5 a gallon gas. We didn't have inflation at nearly 9% or 10. They're all over in the news on that. But it's a different, but that when he's talking about the respondents, when we're just under 50%, we actually weren't, if I interpret what you're saying right, weren't a lot different than last time. So it looks to me like the avenue for us to proceed is undecided voters.
Yep.
By then decided, or is it based upon information we can give them to override what's happened nationally? Some of your undecided may be pretty well, or some of the no's may be pretty well set. But I don't think we're gonna see the national economy potentially change too fast. I'm not hearing anywhere where they're gonna get on to fix any of that.
And I think, there's a couple of things that I think we have to also take a look at is, if we, regardless, we know that we have some significant implications to our budget next year, and as we build our budget next year, regardless, because of expenditures that we've had that have been outside of our control. There's a lot of those right now. But I think then the other discussion point that we have is around short-term, long-term. Do we look at having some discussion of a shorter term ask and coming back later when we have a different type of an economy? I think we have to, there's a couple of different ways that we can kind of dice out the pie and see how that impacts the district. And I think that this is good data, and I think it's good for us to know which groups, the people who have said no, they've said no twice, and we hear that. So I hear what you're saying, looking at that undecided, but then also understanding really truly what are the implications, when you come back and look at, there's not a lot of support for a change in programming, and there's not a lot of, so that's going to lead to some hard decisions and hard discussions, that we really have to look at where our greatest cost, our greatest expenditures are, we'll have to go from there.
So we have a lot of decisions we need to make very fast.
Yep.
Because we have to get it to the state on the amount that we're gonna do. How long will it take to put together a forecast if we, say, look at 400? What does that actually do? Because those are gonna look a lot different.
Yeah.
When we're pumping a zero number in, right?
Oh, agreed.
531 or zero. The public's saying potentially not 531.
Yep.
What does 400 do? And what kind of things do we have to do to make that run for the longest haul we have? And we may end up going into this thing with a number that we know isn't going to make 10 years.
Correct.
Okay, so instead of having this to 10 years, we're going to have a shorter one. And maybe we're at a 7-year.
And maybe we ask for
before we get
7
into
years.
it. And,
Yep.
but I think we're gonna have to base it on some of that.
To answer your
How do I pick
question.
The number, I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, to answer your question, I can have some of those projections ready for our next board meeting to see. And so although it's a business meeting, we'll just have some informational time that we have just no action, because what we need to really parse through is, to your point, what do those projections look like? And then the determining the timeline that we need to determine so that we can meet all the timelines to have things published and determined appropriately is our July board meeting. So
So when we bring those projections to the next board meeting, it becomes public. Can we get them on Friday
yeah,
instead of on Tuesday? I don't want to walk into a meeting.
Yep.
And having to try and make decisions at a meeting without having time to
Sure.
take a
And-
look at it. I'm the old pencil guy. I'll write, get some paper out and scribble all over it until see how we make it work.
yep, absolutely.
But
Not to interrupt this conversation, just in respect for Rob here, do we have any more questions regarding the survey? Because it, you know, we can continue our referendum talk, but just, do we have any more questions on the survey for him while he is with us?
I'm good on the survey.
It's pretty
Okay, good.
I think we appreciate all your presentation today and
course.
work you've done with the survey and certainly great information and get us at least moving down a good direction.
Yeah, you bet. And for better or worse, Janelle knows how to find me. So if you do think
Yep.
of other questions as you think about it, by all means, let me know. I'd be happy to help out.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Have a good night.
You too. Yeah, we can continue now. I just wanted to,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
as usual, we would funnel all questions to Janelle.
Yep, so if
Anything we have relative to this, going, following the same.
what I'm happy to do is to put out a survey, or a form that you all can fill out and you just submit the request to me. And then if we have a common theme, I'll just wait and answer, pull him together at one point. But then if there's common themes, because if you have, members of the community that you're hearing questions about or dollar amounts or things like that, funnel it to me and I'll pull it together with him if there's something that we can't, that I don't know based on this information. But I will put that out for you guys so you have a place to put it.
So, when we do the forecasts, obviously those are in a format that, it could maybe, we would need to know what 531 looks like in next year's budget,
Yep.
right? And what should we pick for other numbers? I'd like to see two, maybe personally, one about 450, maybe one that say 375.
I'll put together a number of increments. I know
Yeah.
that Matt
Just so
had
we
done that
kinda
for you in the
see
past, so you.
How
can
that
see.
works, and then
Yep.
let's just see what I think he's given us information, saying that for us to go back for 531, we're probably gonna shut it down before we start out of the gate. So there's no sense wasting our time there. But at worst, it gives us longer time to decide where we have to cut to make it work.
If we
Right.
can get, if there's
We
something.
get a 375, it's not enough money, people can know it's not enough money, but then we can methodically decide how we are going to achieve that goal of trying to make that money work.
I think when these decisions are being made, we do have to align it with the strategic plan. I mean, we did that for a purpose so we could make decisions, so that's gonna be tough to do, but the balance out, I mean, it has to align with our strategic plan. And that's hopefully will be a way that can guide our decisions, not that, you know, it's based off of my personal feelings or whatever it is, but this is what was decided for the district to try to make our decisions in alignment with that. Which I know that's kind of abstract in some ways and, but it.
No, but I think what you need to look at too is the district is telling us we cannot go back at 531. We have to go back at a lower number. And then I think we look at the strategic plan of what areas can we cut or get.
And the part is, for the no's, we don't know that they would say yes, even if it was at 300 or 200 or 100, we don't know. So I think the undecided and the decided and trying to get, you know, more people hopefully to the undecided, but that's the hard part is we don't know that the people that no, I wish we did, like at what point would they? Like our last survey, I think we said like at this amount, would you be more likely? And that helped us, like we just, it's a no, and you don't know what, if that's like because of the amount or because.
Yep. And one of the other things that is likely and I'm making an assumption because we don't know the no, but with the current ask, it was indexed to inflation. And we know that that's a huge hot topic right now, and that's a significant concern. So that, you know, removing that might be something for the district, the board to consider as well. Is that an area where you say, okay, remove that context and reduce the amount slightly? and
I've talked to enough people that have nothing to do with the inflation rider.
Yep.
They would let us put it on as a second question.
Yep.
But not in the question.
That's what I've been hearing.
And I've heard it
That's
probably for the last few months what we're talking about.
Yep. Because
Going back.
inflation is pretty.
What's scary for people.
Well, that's what happened. New London ended up splitting it and putting it as a second question and that got voted down.
Yep.
They got the,
Yeah.
to do the inflation, they split it because they were afraid. And the first question passed and the second question didn't. And right now with inflation the way that it is, getting something to pass with that attached to it, I don't think
That makes sense. A red flag does go up, inflation's going up, our costs are gonna go up too. So we're gonna be in a situation as well. Our costs are gonna go up. We don't have that inflation as a cushion. That's going to potentially mean more and more cuts or eating more into our general fund. But I totally get it.
Okay.
If people aren't gonna do that, then we have to figure out.
But at the same time, if we don't pass a
Right,
levy,
exactly.
we're in worse
Getting
shape
out there.
than worrying about.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
So, two questions I have for it would be, can you also, update us on when the tech levy ends as well? Because that's another question that we're gonna have to consider. I think that's 2 years,
Sit next
or
year.
is it the end of
1
next
year.
year?
I have 2
Years.
more.
2 years.
2 more calendar years on
24,
that?
25 is the last.
That's what I
Yep.
thought. I thought it was 2 years after this one finished at that one. So that just verify that. And then, if we're bringing comparables, I'd also just like to just reintroduce the conversation of where we are at with our levy versus other districts, local districts, because to my understanding, we're $600 to $1,000 under most of our local districts in what we're currently receiving. You know, it just to have that conversation as well, because I feel like there's a reason why every other district is so much higher, you know, and we just need to.
Well, the issue with that is that we categorize ourselves. So get communities that are our size, then take.
No, I'm saying,
They're in a different group.
I'm saying you take.
Oh, I'm there.
The communities our size are still $600 over us.
Right.
You know, per pupil. It's. You know, not
And I
just
think,
for-
I
not
think we
just-
can do two different comparisons. I think we can compare like districts. But I also do think we have to look at our neighbors, because our neighbors have the ability, as you're looking at regionally at what, if I can look at a school regionally, and I'm gonna look in this region, I'm gonna look at a Rocori, a New London, a BBE, an Eden Valley Watkins. I'm gonna look regionally. So I think there is some value in doing a comparison to both like size and region.
That's why I would separate two, because here's how it always works. That all the lower ones are the big schools, and then all the smaller schools are higher on the scale, because we always see it grouped together.
Sure.
We're
Yeah.
two different organizations. We are trying to do
Yep.
lots of stuff with less students.
Yep, I can pull those together for you.
What is the shortest term we can levy for?
We can levy for as few as we want. I thought there's no a max of 10, if I recall.
I will confirm that. I don't know that for certain.
But I think if you levied for 10 years, we don't have any idea where this economy will go.
Right.
Right? And I was a young man when we were kind of in some of this kind of stuff. It took a lot of years. It wasn't just a few years to get back out of these things. It would seem to me that if we looked at a 10-year, but I think we can override the 10-year and go for a higher one
You have to revoke it.
and
then-
accomplish
yeah,
almost the same
Okay,
thing.
so you
So if
can
you make a
revoke-
7,
and
or
revoke.
we do a 10, and it doesn't, I think we can keep it in force if it doesn't pass. So at least we don't give away everything for 3 years potentially to keep us in existence.
So we can look, and I can find that out and see.
Yeah, but
But I think I'm with you there. I don't see any way that we're gonna make 10 years. That's just personal.
Not-
Not
Not-
gonna change, not a chance.
And I think that's where our initial 531, I mean, that it sounds like an odd number, but that's where that shook out with inflation to cover us with the assumption over 10 years, with the assumption of,
Inflation as it
yeah,
was.
correct. And it was, that was why that number was there, was because that was going to cover us 10 years with the assumption of what the economy could do. Anything less than that, without the natural cuts across 10 years, we're not gonna be able to cover 10 years, but I believe we can, revoke and renew another amount.
Well, we were looking at 2% inflation. If right now we're at the inflation numbers they're talking about, well,
Inflation wasn't
we're
good.
531 in and up at the moment. So we need to get something that the taxpayers are comfortable with.
Yeah.
And at least get ourselves a Band-Aid on this thing. And try and do the best we can. But it's also gonna mean serious look at where we're spending the money. Because everything we have in mind, strategic plan and everything, nothing works if you don't have any money. It kind of becomes a non-issue to a degree if we're out of money.
And Janelle, you had shared that our rating went up again. Right, we went to
Yeah. it was
for borrowing.
that bond.
So our bond rating is up,
Yes.
yes.
So, I mean, those are things that.
And
it's
part of,
important, I think that people know, like,
and again, part of the
they're
reason.
financially.
Part of the reason that our bond rating went up was because of our fund balance, right? I mean, and I think that's important to remember. As we, when we look at, I know we've talked, and I've heard you talk as a board about the roof systems and having those in place and taking a look at that in a couple of years. If we're in deficit spending and we are tapping into our fund balance and we have roofs that need to be repaired and we don't have enough money in the long-term facility maintenance, we're gonna have to come back and look at bonding again. Well, then what happens? If we don't have our good bond rating, have we shot ourselves in the foot by digging into that fund balance? And now so it is a lot of things to consider when you're looking at the big picture, for sure, right?
Because if we go in under, then we're not managing and running well because we're having to
Part of
cut
the
and cut and
strategic
cut.
plan.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know.
I think we should find out whether bond ratings made an actual difference in percent.
Right. like, what
I
is
didn't never
going
see
to?
that. It's like a lot of things, it's conversational.
Oh, for the last one, I thought,
What was
it's,
the actual percent?
I'll go back and look, because it was in the packet that Ellers gave, I'll look.
Was it a tenth?
Well, for us, it
Maybe
ended up
2
being
cents?
almost $60,000. Yeah.
Right,
It
but
was
we're talking
it
about,
was-
it would be based on a percentage.
Of our rating, or
It's-
the interest rate.
It's there.
Yeah.
But some of the things, the idea of holding our level of the extra,
The fund-
our
fund
balance.
our
policy.
fund balance. From everything that I have seen so far for the budget coming up, we're just about kicking that thing out the door.
Yeah.
Unless you have some magical thing that you can pull out of your hat. I just
I
don't
don't
see
have a
it.
money tree in my
There's
back
only
there.
so far that you can make these cuts. And not affect everything, and we're kind of. And I don't think this is gonna be a lot of fun for the next couple of years. We just need to do the best we can, and hopefully we can get a sense from people. And maybe all of us need to be talking around. What kind of numbers are people comfortable with? And let's make a point to talk to people that aren't in this system, in this system bubble, because that's who's gonna decide our vote. So I think I'll just start asking around a little
And
bit
if-
and see where people are at.
And if you get that information, if you want to send that to me so I can pull those in for some projections, that would be.
So the non-parent group, the group that was most likely to say no, the 2 channels that they said were the highest that they would like to receive the information is the press and district or school newsletters. So is that something like do we share the survey results, say, share your feedback for those who said no, we'd like to hear? Or what's kind of the next step for letting our community know where we're at so that I would like them to know the process. I mean, we don't necessarily know, but that's okay. I'd like to have them along the path with us on how we're going to.
That same notion that we're hearing you, we're listening
Yes.
to you, and now we're going to for that support.
Right.
We're where is that support at? If there's an ability to outreach that without.
I thought it was real clear that just make sure it gets to the press.
Yep.
Put it everywhere else, so everybody has access to it. Get it in the Paynesville Press, because that appears to be, what everybody's reading.
And the emails were for the parent groups. I think anybody who's on our, in our database that we can email would be a good way to share that.
So, yeah. I think that's anything else, we just kind of go back with those numbers and have another discussion then.
If I can read one thing.
Yes.
Okay, so when we got to this one, a little bit of what happens to on cuts. So it was where on, but doesn't have a page, there's background information. Cost cutting options, priority scores. Athletic and co-curricular athletes. That was only one we were over the top. That is supported by lots of people. We already talked about that a couple meetings ago. Changing fees, things like those kind of things offset that. And I think it came on us as dead ears because nobody really wants to see that. But I mean, that's what the survey said.
Obviously, they're okay with it.
But I don't know. Yeah, good question. I'm not certain exactly what that means, what they would want cut. I think from my perspective and not wanting to raise fees is we want to be inclusive. Like, we
Yeah.
want to make sure that students who can't afford to participate can participate. And I know there's systems in place, I believe, that students can. So if we do that, I think we need to have a very clear plan that those that can't afford it, we still want them to participate. Because this should not be a district of the have and have nots. So that's my concern of
comment
raising.
wasn't specifically fees,
Okay,
it was a category.
okay.
So let's just think up for yourselves. Let's look at that category. What can we reduce in that category? Who wants to go around and tell somebody that when the sports isn't gonna exist? Who, we're gonna keep fees the same. So we have what you talked about. Who's gonna do that? That's the stuff that gets hard for our superintendent, because it will all come back to the superintendent on how we're gonna manage this thing. Everything in budget's gonna show up on your door somehow or another. But we have to be really aware that, man, these cuts are miserable. And I've told you the story before about one that I remember for the rest of my life, and I will always believe it was a mistake. We just didn't have any choice. It was disgusting.
So next steps, like, because there's two things we have to deal with. We deal with the current budget and those reductions, then we have to deal with this and like, how are we gonna start promoting and talking? Last time, I believe we had a committee that helped drive some of this, and I think we worked with Education Minnesota. They helped produce some of the print pieces, right? I think they helped produce some of those pieces. They provided the phones when we did the calling. They actually did a lot of great things for us. So I don't know at what point we need to start getting into like building out the action part of it, because I think we're gonna have to get in front of people and share more information.
And I think, and I know that, there's a lot that you can do as a citizen. You know, we need to present information as a board.
Right.
And we need to present the ask and the need and the why. And then, private citizens can carry that charge in whichever way, right, they would like to. But you're right, I do think there was a partnership with Education Minnesota last time.
Because we produced a newsletter and a postcard, I believe, from the district that it wasn't about vote yes, it was just here's what it is. Informational, so that's like the district can provide that, but then having like the vote yes committee, yes, that's a separate thing. But it
But
was
our
a big
data, should-
driver.
I mean, the information needs to be our information, because that's,
They worked, I mean, everything looked the same, it was the same language.
Yep.
That was shared.
I can reach out to Mary Landecker too, our Education Minnesota president, and see what she.
Like what,
Just so it can get in the press.
yeah, because what's our goal?
I mean, it's pretty clear that 80% has come from the press, so we can talk about what we want, and it's real important. Whatever we're doing, in all factors, has to get the paper press where you're missing the group
Yep.
of people.
And
And to think that older people are just gonna automatically say no, they may say no based upon not having proper information. So we have all these great things that are going on through all these new communication methods, but it's not working for them. We need to get it to them, so. They all, many of them had children of their own. Many of them had this going on in their districts as they grew up and as they were younger adults. None of this is new for them.
So Megan, to answer your question, I think the timeline for that will be after we come together and set what the target is.
Okay.
And then I think we roll out some next steps on that June 28th.
Okay.
In the June 28th meeting.
Perfect.
Further? Let's move on to the 2022-2023 budget.
Oh, wow, how quickly they. So I will pull this up. I'm gonna present this one as well. There's not a lot of changes here. You'll recognize this to be the same as, you'll recognize this to be the same as, was presented last month. But I did add a couple of items in there. This is a hyperlink, so you can click on it and it'll bring you to the typical, budget sheet that you are used to seeing. But really all I did is there's just two things that were updated, this chart, which was our original chart, okay? And then I added some updates and I've got in red what the areas that were updated. And that's where I really want to spend the time talking about today. So, the budget assumptions, the revenues, nothing changed there. The expenditures, there were not a lot that were changed. We did go in and, we reflected in this year's revised budget, the actual costs for fuel, and that did impact then our starting point, obviously, because those were significantly increased over what was budgeted. You will see I did remove, we have negotiated the transportation contract, and so we're working on finalizing the language there. But that will allow us not to need to purchase a van or a handicap accessible van. So that's good for us from a cost savings perspective. So that has been removed from the capital funds. You will also see, as Mary talked about a little bit earlier, we are not going to rehire the resignation that came in earlier. So that cost savings is reflected. And then we also have the reduction, the halftime FIAD teacher, where we were not able to fill the position at a 0.5. So instead of trying to drum that position up, we just opportunity for us to absorb that into the schedule. So that has been done as well.
I have a question about, so I know in the update from high school principal, they're going over the class schedules. Are you seeing or hearing that we're being able to look at classes that maybe less students are taking and evaluating? Are there gonna be less maybe overrides?
Yes.
Or, okay,
Yes.
so that will help.
That will also help.
Okay.
So it was, one of the things, it does change. They did look at where kids were registered, and if they were maybe on a bubble where we could have the staff, we would have offered it, but because we don't have the staff, we just won't offer it. Those are the decisions that were made. So that has been taken into account for sure. Yep. The other thing that you'll notice, so if you want it, when you look at those first two charts, the biggest difference, and one of the things with our Esser funds, those funds were fluid over a couple of years, and so they were built in last year's budget, but they weren't expended. So then we had to move them to this year's budget, and now we expend them. The portion of the that did go back into the 21-22 for the indoor air quality, because those expenditures have taken place. Okay, so that's when you look at those Esser funds. Now, the piece that I think is really important to remember is that those funds are highly targeted and they're allocated for very specific items, that there's not fluidity to apply them elsewhere, which is important to remember. So I just wanted to add that as a variable though, that has taken place as we're developing the budget. Okay. And that really is the change. So as you see, there is not a lot. That's why there was not a lot of time allocated to this area, because there's not a ton to talk about. It's really more so just those areas that were, in limbo that we now have planned as we, and that budget will be presented on the 28th for approval. Okay. Any other
That'll
questions?
Come with the minutes too, right on.
That'll be out on Friday as well. Yep. And I will send you you'll get the typical sheet that you see, and then I'll give you a narrative of the assumptions that have been made.
What does that all kind of bring us to? Cost wise with all what, or you may not know that yet.
Nope, I've got it.
Oh, okay.
Yep, I can pull that up here. So this is the sheet that you're typically, so this is if you click on the hyperlink. So the big number that you, whoops, sorry about that. People are looking at that, they're gonna get, so that brought us last, when we did our initial discussion a couple weeks ago, we were at 466. And those reductions brought us down to 416. When I present the budget, I will talk about what that means from a % of the fund balance as well. Okay, any other questions on that?
Can you scroll down that for a moment?
Sure. So all of these are the subcategories that were pulled forward on that green sheet. And to be a little bit more, it's just a little bit less, it's combined. This gets to be a lot of data. Okay. The other thing that we are really just keeping on our radar is knowing that free lunches are not going to be in place. You know, we're keeping that in mind as well, knowing that does bring some impacts for some of our families. So just making sure we're keeping that just on our radar about getting information out so that families aren't surprised by lunches in the fall as well. And I say that because that'll impact our food service.
And students will still get a lunch even if they don't have money in their fund.
I believe that has been our practice, yes.
I hope
We
so.
feed the kids.
Well, no, I think we have the board policy, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, we
We
changed
did,
that.
we did that as action in the district, yeah.
Make sure every kid gets that
They get,
regardless.
Yep. Okay, anything else on the budget?
Annual Q comp update.
All right, so the Q comp update is linked in there for you as well. So this is an annual requirement. There is the copy of the presentation that was done at the start of the school year, if you want to take a look at it. But really, the long and the short of it is that this is a requirement for our Q comp plan. We've been a member of Q comp since 16-17. And MDE is not allowing any new districts in. The maximum that a district can levy is $260 per pupil. We levy $169, so we are under levying in that area, which is, I think, a responsible approach from the district's perspective. You'll see some of the areas that are in that have to be part of the plan. They have to align, the work that is done through QComp has to align with the world's best workforce, and it also needs to align with the strategic plan. There is leadership positions within the QComp plan. Some of those are paid leadership positions. For example, our staff development committee had paid leaders this year. We received feedback early on in the as I came on board that our staff development committee, it was floundering a little bit, and there was one of the things that we recognized was that there needed to be some consistent leadership. I think that's something that would make sense to apply to other committees, and you'll notice that committee work is a big part of the plan as well. The other part of the QComp plan that's pretty robust is the peer evaluation. And so that's something that also takes place through the QComp program. So this really is just a summary of what's happening, and then you'll see the dollar amounts that are associated with each of those areas. The growth goals for individuals to meet their growth goals is a dollar amount. You'll see if the staff participate in. They do 2 observations and then they are observed by 2 different staff members. There's a stipend there. You'll see the professional learning communities, the PLCs, members of the PLC, they have to submit their PLC time and hours. The committee work is optional, but there's an additional compensation for that as well. And then professional projects. We had a number of teachers who did professional projects around the letters training. Was there 3 or there was a number of presentations that were done at the staff meeting this year where they presented their professional projects. So those are some things that are in place as part of the QComp plan.
So that 1,300 times the number of staff.
And that's funded specifically out of the QComp. That does not come out of the general fund.
But still levied.
Correct.
So still coming out of taxpayer.
It's correct. Yep. Okay. Any other questions on the QComp plan? Or the QComp update
It's just a quick one. Can we withdraw?
from QComp?
Yeah. It's $169 that the taxpayer are paying. The rest of it we're using to pay somebody's salary. You can have all the training in the world, but if you can't pay them to be here, that's a problem.
I can look into that.
I know that's extreme, but I think we need to be talking about some of that.
I think what we need to be mindful of is if we do that, I think we need to be mindful of how that comes back in, because to negotiations, which is, again, it all comes back together.
We're gonna be at that table
But
almost
it's-
anyway, because
We are, but I
gonna
think
be
it's
looking
something
for
we want to be
money.
thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because
Well,
it is,
and I think if we can relate some of those to how much it actually costs everybody. You know, what's it costing the taxpayer for their $100,000 house,
$169 for their,
for a $100,000 house?
sure.
So
Got it.
for a $200,000 house, it's more than that for a QComp.
I can look at it and I
And we're
can
looking
find
at
out what that.
531. I kind of see what I'm saying. I mean, that's what we gotta look at when we're looking at trying to figure out how you make this budget work.
and that's where the strategic plan will be helpful, because this is specifically tied to student growth and achievement. So that will probably weigh more as important, you know,
Oh, I think
Based
that,
off of-
yeah,
so
we
we'll
have
have
to be
to-
looking at.
right? Because, I mean, this is directly tied to student achievement. But yeah, I think you're right, we should look at everything, but
On the cross-country co-op with Belgrade, Ruby on Roses.
All right, so in the June work session or May work session, I had talked about just high level that Belgrade Route and Rosa had reached out to determine if we had interest in providing a co-op for cross-country. I am going to, I looked at what the dollar amount was for I don't have the transportation. But so just so we have kind of a point of reference, so our cross-country is approximately $13,000 a year. So what would happen is it would be no additional cost for us. But what would happen is any BBE athletes that come on board and they come over to participate, we would then take let's say we have 50 participants and they brought in 5, we would have 55. So then we take our $13,000 and divide it by 55 and we give them a portion of the bill. Okay, it would do the same thing for the transportation. And so it would be no additional cost for us, but it really would allow our neighboring community to have an opportunity to partner with us for cross-country. We do this partnership really well with dance, with BBE. We do this partnership really well with gymnastics, with Eden Valley Watkins. So this isn't a new concept for the district to entertain or consider. And it's been something that has really provided mutual benefit, I think. So, and it also does not change anything for our cross-country team from a class.
rating.
Yep, so that's all fine and good. So, if, I do know that there are some steps where if there's not, opposition to this, We do need to have some board action, but I wanted to lay this out as an informational item so you all could take a look at it. See if people give you feedback or have any questions or concerns. And then we can continue the dialogue again later, but.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
I'm curious as to how do the coaches, like, what is their feedback on this? And then also our students, and then also just clarifying, so they would actually, the BDE students wear a Paynesville jersey, like they would be a Paynesville athlete, or are they a BDE athlete?
I believe they would be,
Right.
I believe they. I have to find out the second
Okay.
question. The first question, our coaches have been approached and discussed, and before we even brought this
Okay.
to the board for discussion, we had support from our cross-country coaches, yeah. But I will find out for certain what that team,
Just curious if we meld together. then,
Yeah,
or- it's just a curiosity question.
and I know the dance, has their own name because we didn't have dance, or did they have dance? So it was a
Right.
new combination. So I need to answer that
I
question.
believe gymnastics all wears Paynesville.
I believe they're all,
I believe.
so,
I went to,
Eden Valley Watkins, Flying Dog. They're
so
melded.
that's a melded, okay.
Melded.
Okay, so I'll find out what that would mean before we have that further.
further on that? Otherwise, we'll go to request for information roundtable. I'll kick it off. I think we've given Janelle a good list of look into this for the next meeting already. Again, I think we've got a lot of good information, a lot of stuff, school perceptions on the survey, things to really think about, things to kind of really start driving some decisions we're gonna have to make here, and hard decisions we're gonna make here in the coming month. And then beyond, to get things prepped for a referendum and get things ready to go. I don't have anything particular in it, but I think our asks are for upcoming meetings with anybody else.
Or maybe we could all start looking at schools that have just passed and look at what some of their marketing materials were, what things that they did, just to get some ideas. Of how it was.
I know, I think I sent the Melrose, that I sent, they're coming up for a facility.
Building bond.
But they got just a nice pamphlet, nice information they had on their website and stuff. And I shared that over to Janelle already when I saw it, and just kind of get some wheels rolling on how to display information differently in a unique way. So. Hearing none, we'll adjourn the meeting.